How have y'all been enjoying the last few days? Good? All right. Well, as Peter mentioned, I'm Cande de León. This is a little bit sweet for me because this is I feel like was my home here. This is where I came to Phoenix with my family. And I have to just make one slight correction, Peter, otherwise I'm not going to be sleeping on the couch. But it's 29 years that we've been married. So that's my fault. That's what happens when you have an outdated bio. So, today's really special because the three individuals that you're going to hear from today are people that have been instrumental in my life and in my family's life. And particularly, they helped me grow professionally, helped me grow spiritually, and they were friends when we didn't really know anybody coming to Phoenix, these three individuals. I told Maria oftentimes that when I first interviewed and when I came here, the one thing that stood out was the amazing hospitality that they showed and how grateful I was for just about ever. I would like to give a few introductions, so because this is an amazing panel that you have here, so you guys are really in for a treat today. But we're going to have, I'll talk more about that in a second, but Dr. Maria Chavira. Dr. Maria Chavira serves as the Chancellor and Vice Moderator of the Curia and touches almost every aspect of Catholic life within the Diocese of Phoenix. She is the first female Vice Moderator in the United States and maybe the world. And as such, she assists the bishop in the oversight of the official archives of the diocese in accordance with canon law. She coordinates and counsels with department directors, directly supervises chancery staff, the Office for Consecrated Life, the Office for Archives, the Office for Catholic Schools, Keno, and the Office of Mental Health, as well as observing special projects for the bishop. In addition to her work at the diocese, Dr. Chavira, who received her doctorate in education psychology from the University of Arizona, is an adjunct professor in the Department of Psychological Sciences at Mesa Community College. In 2005, Dr. Chavira received the 2005 Faculty Excellence Award and was one of the numerous accolades that the Grateful College community has bestowed on her. Additionally, she has served as the assistant to the Associate Executive Director for Academic and Student Affairs at the Arizona Board of Regents. She developed a recruitment model and program for minority transfer students for the University of Arizona and serves as the chairperson of Evaluations Committee of the Hispanic Women's Conference in an effort to increase scholarships for Latina women desiring a baccalaureate's degree. At the national level, Dr. Chavira has worked with the Council of Chief State Officers in Washington, D.C., where she investigated schools to work transition programs in several states and provided research reviews in the areas of adolescent pregnancy, disabled youth, migrant rural adolescents, and high school dropouts. Internationally, she has been invited to Rome several times to present to people from around the world. Dr. Chavira's community involvement is too extensive to detail. However, she is married to Deacon Billy Chavira and has 3 adult children. Could we give Dr. Chavira a warm welcome? Now, Father Fred Adamson, who was my direct supervisor for many years, so Father, after this, you need a beeline out so nobody corners you and finds out about the ugly stuff, or the good, the bad, the ugly, but currently serves as the pastor for St. Bernard Clairvaux in Scottsdale, Arizona. Prior to this role, Father Fred served as the Vicar General and Moderator of the Curia, which serves as the primary advisor to Bishop and acts as the Chief of Staff or Moderator of the Curia for nearly 19 years of faithful service. Father Adamson was ordained a priest for the Diocese of Phoenix on June 3rd, 1995. He has served at several parishes over the years, and he was appointed Vicar General and Moderator of the Curia on July 1st, 2004. He earned his Bachelor of Science degree in nursing from the University of Michigan and his Master's Divinity degree from St. John's Seminary, Camarillo, California. He worked for 5 years as a registered nurse with a specialty in cardiovascular intensive care. One of Father Fred's fellow priests and colleagues, Father Greg, said Father Fred hasn't forgotten where he came from, and he brought the care and compassion from profession as cardiac care registered nurse to his pastoral ministry. The judicial vicar, Father Chris Frazier, said that Father Fred is the hardest working priest I know and have been inspired over the years by work and ethic. And Paul Mulligan, President and CEO of Catholic Charities, said he literally brought all the Catholic organizations to the table, hosting regular leadership meetings, inviting feedback, and fostering collegiality among leaders. Could we give a warm welcome to Father Fred? and I think a hero and a real role model to many people around the country and the world, and right here in Phoenix is Bishop Emeritus Thomas Olmsted. The Most Reverend Thomas Olmsted was ordained a priest for the Diocese of Lincoln, Nebraska, July 2nd, 1973. He was installed as the 4th bishop of the Diocese of Phoenix, December 20th, 2003. Prior to his arrival in Phoenix, he served as bishop in Wichita, Kansas, after being ordained coadjutor bishop on April 20th, 1999. Before serving in Wichita, he served as the rector-president of the Pontifical College Josephinum Catholic Seminary in Columbus, Ohio. Since 1974, Bishop Olmsted has been a member of the Jesus Caritas Fraternity for Priests, and thus has been deeply influenced by the witness and wisdom of Charles Foucault and by the prayers and encouragement of many brother priests. For 16 years, Bishop Olmsted lived in Rome, Italy, where he obtained a master's degree in theology, a doctorate in canon law, and worked more than 9 years in the Secretary of State of the Holy See with St. John Paul II. During the 9 years of serving in the Holy See, he resided in the Pontifical North American College and assisted seminarians with spiritual direction. He was raised on a family farm on the Kansas-Nebraska border. He attended a single-room grade school near Oquito, Kansas, and a small rural high school in Summerfield, Kansas. His first contact with Catholic schools came when he entered St. Thomas Seminary College in Denver, Colorado, from which he graduated in 1969 with a bachelor's degree in philosophy. He still visits his mom now, who is 104 years young. So she prays the rosary every day, and she still rides her bike. And Bishop, does she still driving a truck?
She gave it away 2 weeks ago.
2 weeks ago, she had a truck. Bishop has been one of the most important people in my life, and his leadership has taught me humility, discernment, and trust in the Lord. And collectively, these three people have greatly influenced, served, and impacted literally millions of lives. But I am so grateful how they have done all of this in my life as well. They are my friends, my teachers, and they have been a massive influence in my life. Can we give a round of applause for Bishop Olmsted? So, Bishop, a quick question for you, and maybe perhaps I'll start with how I came to Phoenix, and I'm just curious to know what was the thought process when you started the Office of Mission Advancement, and kind of what was it before, and what was the reasoning for starting that, Bishop?
I think we had a clear sense that Phoenix was going to continue to grow fast, which it certainly has. That meant that our parishes and our schools would be challenged to keep up with that mission. At the same time, I had served in Diocese of Wichita, which was a stewardship diocese. It's amazing what they've been able to accomplish there, where every child can go to school without paying any tuition. So that was a great experience, which I was there not a long time before I came here, but it really influenced me. So that experience, seeing the great challenges here, and also with consultation with people like Maria and Father Fred, it just seemed very important that we look seriously at how we help people be good stewards of their resources, in that way, meeting the needs of the church.
Thank you, Bishop. So, Maria, Father Fred, this question is for both of y'all. So as Bishop lays out the vision and kind of saying, okay, this is really what we should do here in the Diocese of Phoenix, could you share maybe about the practical parts of starting the mission advancement, like some steps that went into that? Many of the people here are development directors, and some have robust staffs and some don't. So maybe you could just talk a little bit about that.
You first, Maria? Well, I will admit, and I can remember a point where Bishop and I were looking at doing this capital campaign. That was quite a large campaign, and we were walking to lunch, and we were walking down the stairs, and I said, Bishop, I really don't know what I'm doing. And he goes, well, we're like the early missionaries. They didn't really know where they were going and what they were going to do, but they did it, and we have to trust. And
yeah, I'm trying to look at perhaps. I'm going to try turning that off real quick. Is yours off, Bishop?
I don't know.
Oh. This is here. We may have to turn off and on.
I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay, I might know.
That should work.
So anyway, what I would say is that we were using a consulting firm in the very beginning, and they really helped us come in and assess our current office and really made a recommendation that was different. They could have come in and done the campaign for us, but they made a recommendation that we set up an office of mission advancement so that we would have people on the ground that built the relationships as we.
Sorry. Can I just take this? Thank you. Thank you.
Technical.
I'm an old man. I'm not used to all this stuff, you know. But anyway, it was. So I would say it was a lot of trust, and I think from the very beginning we trusted in the Lord and built it on relationships. It was key, certainly with the guidance of the bishop, but myself and Maria and Father Greg Schlark, who couldn't be with us today, and a few others, really started a small group that we started meeting regularly once a week, trying to put things together. But I would say that I think it was built on a foundation of good working relationships already and good communication, which was key. And I think from that then, I would say that a lot of other people would have scratched their heads as fast as we went and what we put together, including Cande when he got here. He was like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that. I said, no, Cande, but here's what we're doing. You got to help me. And he did help us. And so it was, I think a lot of it was just trusting in the Lord and being brave. And, you know, I'm finding that now in the parish after being away for 19 years, you know, going in, we just completed a big campaign for a rectory and some other good things. And so I just am not afraid to get out there and engage people.
Well, one of the things that comes to my mind, Father Fred, is when I first started as the chancellor, Father Fred said, and you know one of the things they're going to be doing? I'm like, no. He said, we're going to be putting together a $100 million campaign or something like that. And I'm like, oh boy, what did I get myself into, right? But I think that one of the key pieces to what it is that we worked on together was that it was rooted in prayer. It really was right from the beginning. And through the prayer and through true discernment, I think we would talk about what it is that was being stirred in our hearts. So right from the beginning, that was the start. I think you really led that, Bishop, as a model for how it is that whole leadership was going to be developed. And so that's one of the takeaways that I always remember.
So next question for Bishop. Bishop, one time, I think one time you and I were talking and we were talking about the leadership for the campaign. And you said that you had a conversation with, some of you all know in here, a gentleman by the name of Mike Geddes. And you were talking to Mike about becoming a leader of the campaign. And Mike told you no. And do you remember that conversation, Bishop?
I do.
Could you share a little bit about that conversation?
Well, I remember it because he had been the leader of other campaigns before with the previous bishop that was here. And so I fully understood why he didn't want to do another one, because he'd also done that for some of our other institutions, parish and that kind of thing. The more that I thought about it just in the days after I was with him, it struck me as a really good suggestion too, because he didn't speak Spanish. He wasn't really deeply involved with the Hispanic community. We've a large Hispanic community here. We also have a large Filipino community here. We have a significant contribution made by the Filipinos, by the Vietnamese, and other groups. So to choose, Mike would not have fit into that model. I think of what was evolving here, we needed some kind of new thought. And I remember having a great conversation with Tommy Espinosa and Armando Ruiz, who were two Hispanic leaders. And that really helped me get a sense of leadership by men who were Hispanic, but who also spoke English completely fluently, and who knew a lot of the leaders in the community, both Hispanic and all the other kind of cultures that were here. So Mike's suggestion, or his refusal to do leadership, because he thought we should have something different, was right. And I think that helped me to look out to other leaders we already had in the community and helped me think about, therefore, other leaders that might help us.
Yeah. Thank you, Bishop. And because of that discernment, Bishop, I mean, we got this whole new set of leaders that were, it was like the next generation of leaders coming through the Diocese of Phoenix. And they were excited, and I think they were really grateful that they were invited. And when Bishop or Father Fred or Maria called them, they oftentimes told the story, they felt that they were being called by the Holy Spirit, which is really special. And I think it speaks to all of us that we have that opportunity to also invite new leadership in, and that you're not just calling on your own behalf, but if it's been prayerfully discerned, you're calling on behalf of the Holy Spirit to help move the mission forward and to help guide it. So as we put this together, so as many of you as development directors, and you realize that when you have a campaign, one of the first things you're doing after you understand that there's a need and you studied for it is you put together a leadership group and you help to have people to help you move it along. And certainly if you're inviting them, you want to have a process in how you do that. When I came to the Diocese of Phoenix, what Father Fred was mentioning is that they already formed this whole committee together. They hadn't invited them for a gift yet and everything. And I told Father, I was like, Father, I think y'all jumped the gun on this. And he's like, Cande, it'll be fine. It'll be fine. Trust. And I said, okay. So him and I started talking more and more about it. And Bishop talked so much about prayer, and Maria talked about prayer. We did something that I really didn't anticipate and certainly can't take any credit for, but I have really rooted into everything that I've done from that moment on as a development director. And that is put prayer at the center of it, like really intentionally and being really, really serious about how you do it. And Father, could you share maybe, we got the cabinet. Do you recall what we did before every cabinet meeting?
Yeah, every time we came together, I mean, we always started in prayer, so we'd start in the chapel. And we felt that that was very important from the very beginning. And part of it is that the campaign needed to be something, and we shifted our language very early. We didn't call it a campaign. We called it really a move for evangelization and to support the mission. So we really would try to get people to shift language if they were talking about, you're doing a capital campaign. We know we're doing a campaign for evangelization and mission, and we want you to support that. So it was a real invitation. So it had to really be started in prayer and rooted in prayer always. And actually, I was with Dr. Shabir, and we were up in Sedona. Shout out to the people in Sedona. And we were in the gift store there, and we were looking for a cross. Bishop, we were talking about an image that would kind of guide us through. And one of the things Bishop said to me is, he says, you know, we're really trying to support the mission. We're mission territory, really, with what's going on. So I was looking for a simple wooden cross with a turquoise on it, and we walked into the store there, and there it was. And so we held it up and brought it home and showed it to Bishop, and that became our image. But it really was something that we focused on over and over again, both with all those who helped us continually in their gifts, and we just looked to the cross always. And if you'll go out to the courtyard and you look at Padre Kino, who's out here, and Kateri Tekawitha, when we designed those, they both hold the cross. And we told the artists we wanted them to hold the cross because it was very typical of an early missionary. I mean, they were being led by the cross. And I would say that really did help us as leadership team, but then the members of the committee and those that supported us were really following the cross as well. We presented them formally liturgically with a cross as well.
Yeah. Maria, a question for you. So as we were going through the campaign, the staff, the people around us, and for those of you that may know Dr. Maria Shabira, she's a very likable person, and she's like a magnet. People they just attract to her, and she really has a good pulse of the staff and understanding. And I think the staff is a really important part of any major campaign that you're going through. It's not just a development effort, but it's the effort of the entire organization coming together with a really intentional focus to bring a mission together. So Maria, could you maybe share a little bit about your perspective of how we went through the campaign and with the staff and what that was like, and maybe some hesitation or questions or what's going on, and just maybe the good, the bad, the ugly on it?
There's a lot of good, Cande.
Yes.
Lots of good, you know. But I think what I would just like to emphasize is one of the things that I remember you saying, Bishop, and I might get it wrong, but the gist of it I think I got. And one of the things Bishop would tell us would be something like this: God brings the people that he needs for the time. And I really saw that. And so sometimes the people that are right in your midst are the people that God has brought that have gifts that you just need to be open to and explore. And I think when you're open to that and open to what it is that God's will is for them and how they're supposed to be involved, it's really kind of like a little miracle when you get out of the way and just let it happen. Because the staff has so many gifts that they brought. And I think that all of us, myself included, sometimes get in the way because we have an idea in our head. But I go back to what I said before, Cande, that everything we did was rooted first in prayer. And so when you start with that, you go back and you get silent and you listen to the voice of God. And when you do that, it's amazing what you can hear. And God just brings those people that he needs for the time.
Thank you, Maria. Bishop, this one's for you. So early on in the campaign, after we started putting the case together and the policies and kind of really putting the team together and recruiting, so all the nuts and bolts that go together with a campaign, before we asked anybody for money, you and I had a private conversation, and we talked about, Bishop, you're the leader of this organization, you're the spiritual leader, and if we're going to ask anybody to do something, the leader goes first. And we talked about a gift and praying about it, and you said that you would discern, and you did make the first gift of the campaign. But something else in that conversation we talked about was going out and inviting other people into the campaign. And I remember I asked you, Bishop, I said, Bishop, oftentimes, sometimes priests, they have a hesitation with inviting people to make a gift. They don't want to talk about money. And I said, how do you feel about that? And Bishop, I don't know if you remember this, but you said, Cande, I have prayed about this. I have discerned about this. The Holy Spirit has called this. I am going to do whatever it takes to invite people into this campaign. And that really changed the whole trajectory, because when the leader goes first, it really set the example, and it became about invitation. So Bishop, you and I went on about 40 personal invitations inviting people for gifts. And I would say 98% of them resulted, 99% of them maybe resulted in a very generous gift. Could you share what the experience was like? And really, perhaps money was kind of like this big, but the actual conversation was this big and other. Could you just share a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I think of visiting with our priests, because they're leaders in every one of the parishes. And they each had to be really creative about all the things they were facing, because each of our parishes is growing rapidly. The schools within those parishes, or ones nearby, were growing. So I found in the priests, what really helped me, they weren't discouraged. They were sometimes a little afraid for the right reasons, but they recognized that the goals that we had here needed to be addressed at this time. And then lay people, a lot of the pastors helped us to know which would be good leaders in their parishes, and they were generous in recognizing if they're going to be helping out the campaign, wouldn't all go to their own parish. But at the same time, they had leaders who knew, if somebody is going to be generous, they're not doing it just for one cause. They'll give it for a number of causes. So generosity doesn't ever, if somebody gives a really generous gift, that doesn't mean they won't help anybody else. There's something about a heart that gives, wants to give more and more and more.
Thank you, Bishop. Father Fred, could you share maybe a little bit about what it was like talking to people about the campaign and inviting them into the campaign, like what kind of opportunities that provided?
Normally one of our times if we visited with people, we would go to their homes for dinner, and with dinner there was always prayer, there was always conversation about their kids and what was going on in their life. So a vast majority of a visit, and this would be for a major donor that the bishop was working with, or Cande and I. And Cande had this wonderful placemat that we would use at the very end. So it really was like the last part of the night. We would say, here's what the case components are. Here's what we're looking at, and we invite you to consider and to pray and discern about how you can support the mission. Again, we were very careful not to say, for the pledge. It was just to support the mission, and we tried to develop that language over and over again. And they were just beautiful nights, really. I will say, that I think one of the things that was important for the three of us, but to Cande too, Cande was a big part of this. When we hired him, that's when we got our system set. I will tell you that up to that point, we needed that structure, and Cande added that a lot. And it was actually the recommendation that we had from our consultants too, to hire the person who could help set up the office. But with that then, those meetings were just always about relationship first. And, it starts with a relationship that we had as a team, but then building relationship with the cabinet members. I can remember the first meeting we had with the cabinet. The cabinet was like, they all came and they didn't know quite. We had called and talked to them, and we were in this room, actually, just about half of the room. We had a nice social, and we had music out there, an accordion player. It was an Italian themed night. And they came, and we just wanted them to pray first and then get to know one another. And some of these people have done major campaigns, like, when are you going to ask us for something? And we said, we want you to get to know each other first. We want you to form a relationship. Because it's so different, I think, when you're doing a large campaign with the diocese, because you're bringing people in from all over, and they don't know one another. And so to form a relationship first so that they can surround the mission and what that means. And it made a huge difference. Of course, then Cande, myself, Bishop, Maria, many others met with them at different times, kind of coaching them along. But, if I would say anything, one of the things of my biggest conversion during this retreat or during this campaign was how important relationship is, relationship with one another and our staff. And it was always part of, I think, the staff and what we did here. We really tried to make sure we honored them as individuals and their dignity. But I think even going into a campaign, we weren't really focused about, money. It was more about mission and relationship.
Stewarding relationships. Yeah. I remember Father used to say that over and over.
I was at Notre Dame. I went to Notre Dame with Mike Geddes, who Bishop mentioned, and he took a small group of us just to kind of see what they were doing in their development office. And I was sitting in a meeting with one of their key development people, and they kept talking about stewardship of relationship. And it just clicked to me that that's truly what stewardship is about first, that we are stewards of a relationship with God first, and then stewards of the relationships he places in us. So relationship becomes the most important thing in our life. And then that reveals to me how I spend my time, talent, treasure. But who am I in a relationship with? God and the people around, the parish, the community. So it's totally shifted, certainly when I was here, but now even in the parish. I think they get tired of me talking about relationship all the time. God, one another. And with those who, need assistance too. We're in relationship with those that we don't even know, the stranger. So.
Thanks, Father. Just a quick story. I recall, Bishop, you and I went on a visit, and we were inviting the family into a major gift. And so the benefactor kind of pulled a fast one on us, and she said, hey, I have my 2 high school kids. Can they come with us? And I said, can they join us for dinner? I said, absolutely they can. I said, but I've got to be transparent. We're gonna be inviting you for a gift. So are you comfortable with the kids being there? And she said, yes, we were. So we get there, and remember, they were smoking some salmon and showing us around the house. And then we sit down with the adult kids, or they were adults, they were teens at the time, actually. And we were talking, and this was all right around when the whole McCarrick thing came out. That was back in 2017, I think, 2017, and when the whole McCarrick thing came out. And so the 2 high school kids, they look at Bishop, and we're in this nice conversation, and we're about to ask for this major gift. And they say, Bishop, can you tell us about what's going on with McCarrick, and why is this, and why is the church covering this up, and why are they doing this? And I'm just thinking to myself, oh my God, I'm gonna get fired. And I was just like, okay, how are we going to do this? And Bishop, and then you did this eloquent conversation, and you invited them into a deeper conversation. Do you recall that?
Oh, I recall the evening very well.
Could you share a little bit, Bishop?
I think it was really refreshing that they were so honest. and that they cared about the church so much. So they were upset, like everybody had a right to be. And it was a reminder that the work we were doing to really face that challenge was not wasted time. It was a very important time. And until we worked that through to a significant amount in the diocese, we weren't healthy because we had relationships with people who had really been deeply wounded, and they had a right to be heard. They had a right to be apologized to by the bishop and prayed with by him. So that part wasn't something we thought about maybe intentionally. It's just that that's something we had to do. But doing that, I think, also helped us feel like that the church's mission is often with healing and renewing hope and trust in Christ and in his body, the church.
Thank you, Bishop. Maria, if I could ask you also, were there any in particular moments or stories you could share about talking about the campaign that you just realized with this individual or family or group that this is something really special that we're doing, that I wouldn't have had this conversation had it not been for this campaign?
Well, I think one of the memories that comes when you ask me that question is the first time that Bishop and I went to one of the homes. And it was the first time I had journeyed there. And I was so nervous. And we drive up to this beautiful home. And I looked to Bishop and I said, okay, you ready? He goes, oh yeah, I'm ready. So we go in and we knock on the door. And the family just opened up the door. And they had small children. And they were so excited to have the bishop in their home. They were so excited to show, they wanted to show you the pantry, remember the pantry? Because they had just, had this pantry that was humongous. And then the wife, I believe she was pregnant at the time, and she wanted to show the nursery. And then somehow it evolved into, can you bless our house? And so their bishop goes and he's talking to the family and taking pictures and all of that. And so those relationships have continued. And that particular family still has a relationship with Bishop and fond memories that developed because we went out of ourselves. And they had a really good dinner too.
We had lots of good dinners.
Yeah.
Maria, hold on. I've got another one for you. Oh, Bishop, were you going to say something? No, please, were you going to say something?
No,
Oh, okay.
she was trying to hand it off to me.
We're trying to get rid of the mic.
Yeah. Maria, so, I mean, relationships is a big thing. And I think, this talk or this panel discussion is about the development director and the executive team's relationship. And in this case, it's the Curia or the senior leadership team or whatever cohesive leadership team that your organization has, because no one person does anything by themselves. It takes an entire group and utilizing all the talents of each other. And I think with this group, there was a lot of intentionality in what we did. And one of the benefits of that was friendships that we were able to form. And just to kind of give you an example, I've left the diocese. I've been away from the diocese now coming on 3 years, I think. And the other day I'm driving to work and I get a phone call and it's Maria Shavira. And so I'm like, oh, Maria, I forgot to send you that email. And so she goes, Cande, I'm not calling you for that. And I'm like, well, what are you calling me for? And she shared just, she was thinking about me and our family and cared about our family. And she just, I want to check in. This is 3 years after I've left. And I can tell you that happened with every one of these people. Bishop Olmsted, when my family went through one of the worst days of our lives. Around this time 2 years ago, Bishop Olmsted was the first person at our door. Father Fred Adamson was the first person there right after Bishop Olmsted came and was with us. Maria Shavira was when we had all our family had pandemic. And during the pandemic, we all had COVID. Maria was there bringing us food and just being us. And Maria, I guess I would just ask if you could share with the group the importance of the relationship between the executive team and the development director, and how it's not perfect, but it should be authentic and sincere and intentional. Could you just share, because you're a master at this.
I don't know about a master, but I think I'm just what I would describe myself as honest, right? And sometimes that honesty can lead to, Cande, why did you do that? You know, but or Father Fred too. He's like, oh gosh,
True,
here comes Maria.
true.
But we had a relationship where we could be honest with one another. We were authentic with one another. We weren't fake. And I think sometimes perhaps it's easy to be transactional because you want to get to some goal, but that wasn't the focus. The focus was always on who the person that we were working with was and recognizing who they were as a child of God. So as I look at Cande and his family, they're back there, and I look at Isabella and Abigail, they were little.
Yeah.
And Sophia, you said, was in 3rd grade when they came. And so recognizing the milestones in their lives, their graduations, their different things, marriages, all kinds of things, and just being authentic to who the people are in those relationships. And I still call Father Fred, and I call you two bishops, see how your mom's doing. And so those relationships have continued. It takes more work, but they're there.
Thank you, Maria. Thank you, Maria. Bishop, so going back to the relationship between the executive team, something that you did that I really appreciated was during Lent and Advent, we always had days of reflection as a staff. Once a year, Father Fred always brought the entire staff together and just kind of update them on what's going on within the organization. And then twice a year, we would have an off-site leadership with the senior leadership team or the division heads. And it was a small group of maybe, 10 of us, maybe 9 or 10. And we'd go to Mount Claret and we'd spend an entire day there. And we did that twice a year. Could you maybe just talk about that a little and the importance of spending time with your leadership and your team and how that impacts everything?
Yeah, well, Mount Claret, for those who don't know, is like a retreat center. And so it's a place where the center of the whole place is the chapel. And so inevitably, you spend time in there, and everything is kind of round. So it all gives you a sense of relationships needing to be worked out so there's not a lot of rough edges on them. When we went there, it would be a combination of some real serious work that we prepared ahead of time that we knew we had to work our way through. Sometimes easy for walking around the grounds. Obviously we used the chapel as well for prayer. So we were deepening our understanding and appreciation for one another. We also were doing some serious kind of work that we needed to have in place so that the campaign could move forward. And we began and ended the day in the chapel. So it just seemed to flow naturally, especially by the place.
Thank you, Bishop. Thank you, Bishop. Father Fred, when I first started working here, the very first day, I mean, it was like 7 o'clock and I'm in your office, very first day, new on the job, and he brings Father Fred, he has this round table, he sits down and he always has this manila folder with something in it. Every time you meet with him, it's a manila folder and a notepad, and he's just writing, and he comes out and he pulls out this sheet and he said, Cande, I want to talk to you about 3 things that I expect from all my leaders, all the leadership here. And it was the very first thing that he talked to me about. And Father, you say those things to the staff, you say them to everybody. Could you just maybe talk about those 3 things?
Yeah, Cande, actually they came from Bishop, because when I was brand new and he asked me to be his vicar general monitor of the Curia, I had a coach in business, and he said, we got to sit down with him and see, get the pointers and where you need to go. And so I sat down with Bishop with some questions. I said, Bishop, what's important to you? And I had a list of questions so I could really assist the bishop in leadership. But one of the things he said was important to him and he thought was important for his staff was this: clearly defined roles, good communication, and accountability. And those 3 things just kind of got planted in my head. And if you really think, for those of you who are out there working in the field, I mean, if there's a hiccup, what's usually going to happen? Someone's either not doing what they're supposed to in their role or doesn't know their role. Sometimes it's not their fault. Maybe we haven't defined it well enough for them, and what the expectations are. So that communication is something that I think during our team time, we realized that it was never going to be perfect, right? Communication never is. So how do you walk through that, realizing that there are going to be some times that are difficulties. And one of the things that a couple things with Cande and the staff I would always say is we never say the reason we're doing it is because bishops said to do it. That's not an answer in this institution or in this church. We have to make it part of who we are, right? We have to own it, so we don't say that. The other thing that I think happens with leadership, and it happened here, and it happens in the parish, is when somebody comes up to somebody and you don't know, and it's like, I don't know, no one told me. Like I tell my staff, you can't do that. You know, you might not know, but find out then. You know, it's usually a communication break that maybe we forgot or I forgot to say something to somebody, but go to the person and talk about that. So that communication piece was really important. And then accountability, and that's good stewardship of the resources, accountability to one another. If we say we're going to do something, follow through on it. And then to Maria's point and her honesty, accountability would be if we were doing something wrong, Maria would say, Father Fred or Cande or Bishop, right?
No, that's right. Father Fred, on that same note, with just those three things, I was thinking about, I want to switch gears a little bit and go and move from the campaign to something that all of us have experienced most recently, or if you weren't in your role at that time and you haven't experienced a crisis. Everybody will at some time professionally in their career, especially if you're in a leadership role, are going to experience a crisis, and you're going to have to navigate through that. And what I think oftentimes we think is that it's something that you can just that there's a playbook for it, and sometimes there's some structure, but not all the time. And certainly we saw that in the pandemic. However, through the campaign, we had developed these amazing relationships with the staff, with each other, and all the pastors, the entire presbyterate of the Diocese of Phoenix. So when the campaign came, we had a structure in place that was all built on personal relationships. And so, Father, could you just maybe share about like your early thoughts on the campaign? I mean, when the pandemic happened, and what we did, how we came together, how we met, how we communicated with the parishes. Could you just maybe give some insight to that?
That was another difficult time for us. Moderate the Curia is a good title because you moderate a lot, trying to bring it together. So we can remember when this all started happening in February and March of 2020. And we immediately just said we needed to pull the staff together. It was Bishop and a large group that we would meet. And I think one of the things that Bishop always coached and guided for us too is how important it is that we don't work in kind of like silos, but that we work together. So that the team would come together, which would include, at that time, it was a CFO, it was our legal department, it was our HR, and we really talked through things because none of us were experts. None of us were experts in any one area, but the team together could kind of discuss and talk and what we might need to do. We did have experts from the outside. We had an epidemiologist that we knew that was kind of guiding the state, but we would call him about different things that we needed to do here. So I would say that time again was just communicating together, working together, realizing sometimes we didn't have all the answers. We had, I think it was weekly meetings, or maybe at the very beginning, we had podcasts with the parishes, I think twice a week, just trying to update them because things were changing so fast. So that communication's trying to stay on top of it and being a resource to the parishes and to the pastors. And you know what it was like. It was everything from how many spaces should you have and all kinds of different things. And it was a difficult time, but a time that I think, really did pull us together. But it was, again, looking at the gifts that we had on the staff here, the gifts that we had with our pastors, and listening to them. We had some direct meetings with the bishop, and not necessarily here in the building, but they were virtual meetings. We learned how to do that, and overnight trying to do that, but to be able to have those meetings so that they could talk to the bishop and talk to the staff that was trying to guide them.
Thank you, Father. Bishop, so staying on that whole topic of the pandemic, so here you are the bishop of 2 million Catholics, and not only the Catholics, but the community looks to you as a community leader. And you're having to make some really, really difficult decisions that have never really been, with our generations, have been faced with these kind of decision making. Could you, and many people in here are leaders and they manage staffs or teams or they lead their organization. And Could you maybe give some insight into how you were able to, like, what helped you in making good decisions? Were there certain things that were very important to you in making good decisions? And could you offer all the people in here any advice?
Well, speaking specifically of the pandemic, you use the talents of the people there. So Father Fred was a nurse. So he also had contact with medical professionals. So for that reason, you always gave us some little thing about what you saw or what you had heard from medical people. That was helpful for us to know. Because so many of the parishes were getting different kind of confused things, and we could decide then what we would kind of together, the kind of united mission or united message that we would send out to them. Also, we would nearly always have some kind of contact with what the governor is doing, because they're a Catholic governor. And we wanted to know, we didn't want to do something that would be quite different from what they were doing, and they didn't want to do something that was different from what we were doing either. Very aware that these two institutions, the church and the government, could make people really afraid, or could kind of give them a sense that, well, we can make it through this. So just those meetings that we had, with each one being there, including the chief financial officer, of how it's impacting us in terms of collections and all of that. Those weekly meetings, or even sometimes twice a week, really were helpful to get each different perspective and for us to hear one another at that time.
Thank you, Bishop. So any particular advice you could give the audience in terms of how do you make a good decision?
Well, keep the mission first. We have to constantly be aware that the Lord Jesus, if He's given us, and He's given us the gift of faith, He's given us a mission. So we are on a mission. And therefore, evangelization is what we are about. And whatever we're going through, if it's something that's very painful, if it's something joyful, if it's a celebration, whatever, He's at work in that, and He's accomplishing the things that are of the heart and of the soul, which is the main reason we do it. The only reason we ever grow, evangelization is only real when we have conversion and ongoing deepening of our relationship with Christ and closer relationships with those that He's given us to love.
Thank you, Bishop. Maria, this question here is, so this was deeply personal to you and I remember, and it was back in June of 2020, and George Floyd had died. And there was protests in the streets. The staff was restless. The parishes were restless. And it was, and on top of all that, there's a pandemic going on that we're trying to navigate through. And from that, you really led the charge, I think, for the whole diocese, with Bishop's support and Father Fred, on how to bring us together. Could you talk a little bit about some of how we navigated through that and the fruits of the committee that was put together? Maybe talk about that.
Sure, Cande, I think now you're making me realize why I'm so tired.
I feel the same way. I have way more gray hair after I left here.
No, boy, we had the pandemic, and then we had the George Floyd stuff going on, and that was just a really challenging time here for the diocese. We're getting a lot of phone calls, a lot of emotions that were going on, and so Bishop, with his support, he put together a commission. And that commission was made up of individuals, again, an invitation to hear different voices and to hear what it is that was going on. So we met for a while, and some people were very upset because things were moving very fast. They want results. But part of it was really discerning and listening to the hearts of what was happening in people. And some of those things that happened as a result was we started taking a look at what it is that was going on, in particular at that time with our Catholic schools, so working with our superintendent. And so we had some honest conversations there. we had a report that we were able to give to various individuals so that we could take a look at what it is that they could do at their particular level, whether it was a parish, an office, or what have you. But that work was a lot of emotions, right? And I think it goes back to the executive team and what we talked about before, that one of the key things, in my opinion, is to make sure that those relationships and that team is very strong in terms of honesty, being honest with one another, and being able to share our hearts of what it is that's going on and what's moving. And I think that was something that we could all do, right? We were able to share those frustrations. We were able to share honestly with one another, and that's, I believe, what helped move some of those things. And they were difficult conversations. They were not easy.
It was really a painful time, and I bring that up because everything that's going on in our country right now with the polarization and the division and the political arena, and with what's happening in ICE and some of our nonprofits and parishes, we're experiencing that. So some of that is very similar, and what you'll find yourself, I think you already know, it becomes a topic of conversation with your benefactors, within the staff, and it's not something we should avoid, but rather we should get in front of it and start talking as a team. How are we as an organization are going to handle that? So Bishop, do you want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so. I think that's exactly what we needed to do, is to be engaging people in conversations, listening to one another. And it was very important, especially I think the schools, because there was so much happening in terms of teenagers in a special way.
Yeah.
So we really needed to listen to them. And also Arizona State University and Grand Canyon University. What was happening there was affecting beyond, and they sometimes helped us see what was happening beyond the universities themselves.
Yes, good point, Bishop. What I'd like to do is open the floor to any questions. And Alejandra.
I wrote it down so I could listen instead of thinking about the question. So we have learned about the importance of strong relationships among leadership teams. How do you translate leadership vision and priorities in a way that inspires your team to take action and advance organizational goals? And what advice would you give to managers who don't have regular day-to-day communication with senior leadership?
Okay, I want to repeat it. Is that, you wrote it down?
That's a good question.
Okay, let me repeat
You
it
can take
because
it.
I want to make sure that everybody
You
in
can
the
take
room
it.
heard it. So let me put on the glasses. Okay. Okay. Okay, the question is, we've learned about the importance of strong relationships amongst leadership teams. How do you translate leadership's vision and priorities in a way that inspires your team to take action and advance the organization goals? And what advice would you give to managers who don't have regular day-to-day communication with senior leadership? It's a great question.
And that's also for you.
Okay, that's for me too.
Well, Alejandro, looks like they're passing the baton to me. I don't know. We'll take a stab at this. Okay. So I'm going to give you a little example that happened a couple of weeks ago, right? And there was a situation where some of the staff was feeling that maybe they may not be part of something that we were working on as a team. And so I have regular, what I call them Candecito meetings. Every Monday we meet at 9 o'clock with our staff, and we go through whatever's going to be going on for that particular week. And so I read a verse from the Bible that had to do with the body of Christ and how we're all many parts. And so I really kind of took that apart and tried to connect every person's role and how it was important to the whole body, the whole mission. So sometimes somebody may have a role and everybody thinks, oh my gosh, that's the most important role. And someone might have another role and say, oh, that's not important. No, they're all important. And so from my perspective, what helps is trying to connect every single staff member to the mission and what their role is in that mission, and that no matter what that is, that's really, really important. So that's the first part of the question. The second part of the question was communication. If you don't have communication with senior
Leadership.
leadership, you may not have direct communication, but from my perspective, communication, as Father Fred says, that is a big thing. And so having communication from senior leadership as to what it is that's happening is very important. And if they're not getting that, then I would say work with your direct supervisor and keep on going up. Because communication can really put some holes and strains in where you really don't need them, right? So it's really important. I don't know, does that answer your question? I don't know if you have anything to add.
You know, I think with any organization, it's trust too, and that's something that's ongoing, just developing trust with one another. As Maria said, with communication, we did put together, or I did, had a communication kind of outline for certain things. So if the executive staff knew about it first, then we would say, you know, at this point is when we'll share it with the rest of the staff, and then this with the rest of the staff. People want to know, and people, I mean, if you're going to include your team, they need to know. And so it's not secretive, but you have to put a plan sometimes as you're going through things of when's the appropriate time to share the information and include them in. And I always find that to try to bring them into a meeting too, so you're talking to people directly. So Cande mentioned the annual meeting that we would do with the whole staff, and I would go over the whole budget. I mean, I was like, listen, this is a budget, this is what we have, this is what we're trying to do. We would always review, you know, any major things that were going on in the diocese too, or in the offices. I'd always go back, I'd bring them right back to the 3 points, you know, define roles, clear communication, and just remind us, let's all keep working on this, you know. And I think those type of things, regular meetings too, we've met regularly with staff. Bishop and I met what did we meet? Wednesdays, I think, if I remember right. Was it Wednesday? Yeah, Wednesdays. Yeah. Every Wednesday we had a meeting. I'd come in with a stack and an agenda, and Bishop had his list, and others would have theirs, and we'd go through things. So we were communicating, and we would include that. So, you know, I think that, I mean, that's key. And then be attentive to people who, I mean, Maria's really good at this, but I think I was too. Just be attentive to people who might be feeling left out or not included too. And, you know, not all of us have that same sensitivity to that. But when we were sensing that, to bring them in, talk to them. I always end a meeting at the end, but I always say, okay, how's everything with the family going? Or what's going on with your family? You know, the personal things too, I think, are important.
Thank you. And just to answer your question, Alejandra, I think a couple of things. On the first part, a quick story. When I came to the Diocese of Phoenix, we had to build a team really quickly, and we had to recruit a lot of people very fast, and because we were working against a timeline. And so you're really just trusting the Holy Spirit's going to provide the right people. And sometimes that always doesn't work out, especially when you're doing it under pressure. Well, we brought this team together, and then there became a lot of friction within the team, and it became more and more evident. So one day I was thinking to myself, like, how am I going to fix this? Like, how am I going to, like, I mean, I brought my family here. Like, if this thing goes down, I go down, my family goes down. Like, that's where my head is going. And I'm telling you, the Holy Spirit told me, I heard it as clear as day. He said, bring them to me. This is what he said, bring them to me. And so every Monday morning, because it was the start of the week at 8:30, we would take the entire team to the chapel. And we were very intentional. And we said that your job in the chapel is to do one thing, and it is to pray for every single person in here, to think about what's going on in each of their lives, to think about when you're praying, think about their husband, think about their wife, think about their kids, name their kids, name their dog, think about what's going on, and do that every single Monday. And then when you're done with that, if you have more time, then pray for the leadership of the organization, pray for the presbyterate, pray for our diaconate, our religious, and our benefactors and volunteers. And I will tell you, it transformed our team. Lisa, you were a part of it. Would you agree?
Oh, absolutely.
Sarah? Debbie, I hear y'all still do this, don't you?
We do.
How does it work out?
Great.
Yeah.
We couldn't do without.
Yeah. And so I think that's one piece. I think the second piece to what Maria and Father Fred said is, I think sometimes we think that our managers or our leaders or our executives are perfect. And we think that they have all the answers. And what I would share with you is they don't, as you know. We're human. And so it's really important as you are a part of a team that you are having honest conversations with your direct report, the person that you're reporting to and the people that report to you, and making sure that you can, as Maria said, be really honest. And if you feel like you're disconnected, to have that conversation. I think the one-on-ones are extraordinarily important. I think bringing God into your conversations is very important. Don't start a meeting without a prayer. I really, really believe that. You've got to start a meeting with prayer, bring God into it. And then just build that authenticity in terms of what Father said is get to know their families. Oh.
Bishop, question for you. Everybody in this room wants the CEO of their organization to use the words, would you prayerfully consider a gift of X? And I'm curious how you approached that with Cande or with Maria or with Father when you were in that living room of the house. And how did you, as an executive, as a bishop, get comfortable with the idea of saying, I don't know what's appropriate for going on in your life, but as a project, we have this thing to do, and we want you to join us. How did you make the ask?
Everyone was a little bit different, I would say. And we really tried to, if we could, have a meal there so that you began to get a sense of relationships. They talked about more than one topic, and so that you kind of move along that way. But I tried to do this as it was going there to remember that it's Christ's church, it's his mission, it's his body that we're all part of. And each of us has a role in that, including this particular family, even if it's one I don't know very well yet. But they are part of it, and as the bishop, I was their spiritual father, so just kind of naming things that we're doing as a diocese, and then trying to say to them, your contribution is not an unimportant one. Every single one of us have a role in this. Your children do, you do, and the way that you live your faith is a very important one. One of the dimensions of that is fundraising, is finding the resources in order to carry on the mission. And we need your participation in that as well. We need your prayers, we need your participation, and we need your witness.
Peter, I want to follow up on that with you, Bishop, because I remember one time you and I were meeting with a benefactor, and you told a story. And I don't know if you would be willing to, if you remember it, but let me tell you, I'll set it up, I know. But you said that you were a pastor once, and when you were a pastor, you didn't have a youth program, and you were trying to build one. So you brought some parents together. And the key thing that I recall you saying is you told them what you were about to ask them wasn't going to be easy. It was going to be hard, and it was going to require sacrifice. Could you maybe share a little bit about that?
Yes, that's when I was a pastor of the parish in St. Vincent de Paul in Seward, Nebraska. And one of the things I learned very quickly that you become a beggar when you're made the pastor. And in the begging, what you're really doing is you're inviting them into the mission of the church. And you need to name exactly what you see in them, which is why you're coming to them. So I'm asking you if you would do this, because I know that, well, I've noticed in your family a faith seem really alive. And I'm pretty confident that the Lord could use that for others. But I know that this will take real sacrifice on your part. It's going to require time. It's going to require maybe moving a little beyond things that you're comfortable with. But it's from families like yours that I think Christ will help others hear what he's doing here within our community, our parish, and in our families.
Thank you, Bishop. Any other questions? You guys got a wealth of knowledge up here. Yes, Jamie.
Do you have any advice
Hold on.
for
This
ask too. So I am Jamie Crane, I'm at the Diocese of Colorado Springs. Do you have any advice for a leadership, senior staff going through a potential change of leadership? So we just had our bishop named as archbishop. So now we're in this change, uncertainty. We don't know what we're gonna do. So how can you have advice on how I can, as a senior staff person, navigate all that, be a leader, be a helper, to continue those relationships, even amongst our staff and out to our diocese?
I think we should have one of these two because I left, somebody else. So they have more fresh memories of this.
I'm trying to think, Marie, you have to help me in like my brain. We use Patrick Lencioni and his talks about change a lot, and we took and reviewed that as a leadership team and communicated that. Just trying to understand what happens with change and where people are at. And I think working with the staff and recognizing that and just talking about it, I think was helpful, and realizing that we are in this place of unknowing and uncertainty and all of that. None of us like that. So trying to put together as much as you can that's stable and unchanging during that time was important. But I think you have to recognize some of that. And, you know, I mean, I know for lay people, I mean, even though it's a change of a pastor, they don't know, am I going to have my job? What's going to happen? So the best way, I think, is just trying to recognize that. But Patrick Lencioni's, I can't remember, was it one of the videos or one of his presentations on change, was really helpful to us. I can't remember the details of that off the top of my head.
I can't remember the details either, but I remember the graph.
Yeah.
Remember when there's uncertainty. But, I mean, it's scary because you don't know what's going to happen, right? And the thing that kind of helped me was just always remembering what the mission was, right? It is. And just being focused on that and being attentive to the staff and to what it is that their real feelings were and what it is that they were experiencing, and having open opportunities for them to share, because those things are real. So if you kind of put the blinders on and say, oh no, everything's fine, and nobody has any fear, no, then they're not allowed to voice what that is. So having the opportunity to be able to talk about it. And change is hard, but we get through that. And with change comes growth in different ways. And so being open to that and what God's going to be bringing to you.
Thank you, Maria. Any other questions? Yes. Or, let me grab this.
Hi, Aaron Morak with Diocese of Corpus Christi. So I'm in the first 6 months of my role, work under a director, and first time kind of doing this. I have a history in sales and obviously relationship building with that kind of job and occupation. For me, I have a hard time helping or getting on the phone and talking to people and asking them just to sit down for coffee, you know, or for me, it was always about the ask of sitting down for a sale, right? Everyone knew, understand what I was doing. For this, it's like, well, I don't want to sit down for coffee with you. Or it's more like, well, why are we doing this? They always ask those type of questions, and I kind of come back and say, well, I need to get to know you. I'm trying to get to know the parish, trying to get to know your family, I want to know like who you are, what your likes and dislikes are. How do you think things are running? How things aren't running good, bad? I mean, I'm trying to throw anything, just like try and give them a bone to grasp on, to at least just sit down with me, right? So it's a lot harder for me to kind of to get going with those types of questions if people just have a blockage, just kind of that first interaction.
Thank you. You work with Joe Litke, right? Tell him I said hi.
Yeah, I heard that I do.
Okay.
You probably should answer this one, Cande.
Okay. So this is what I would share with you, Aaron.
Yeah, I really
First of
think
all,
it's
if
pretty
anybody
bad.
in the room is being honest, everybody in this room has felt what you felt at some point. Even the most seasoned development directors feel this. I mean, it really is. It takes a long time. And what I would share, what helps with that first kind of awkward kind of cold call, what helps is just recognizing that it's not a manufactured relationship. And when you kind of make that decision that I'm not looking for a manufactured relationship, a transactional relationship, to call because of I'm trying to get a gift, but you're really just calling to get to know them. And here's what I would say. That's kind of the big picture. But the most practical way I would say it is, I've heard development directors say this a lot, and major gift officers. So I'll share with you. They say when I meet with a donor, I try to get to know them, and I ask them question about them. I want to know all about them. My role is to not talk about me and talk about just them. And what I would share with you is that's wrong, because that's not a real relationship. A relationship is two ways. So you have to be willing to be vulnerable, and you have to be willing to share about yourself. And so it's not the Cande show, but it's us, and it's finding common ground. And so, simply it's like, hey, I just want to call my name. I mean, there was one benefactor, I remember I looked in the database and I just called her, and it was like huge benefactor. And I was like, I don't even know what to, I just called, hey, my name's Cande, I work for Bishop Olmsted, and I'm new in town, and I just want to introduce myself. And they was like, oh, hi, Cande. And so, but really, I mean, that's the way it is. You just got to walk into it and just say, hey, I don't want anything but just to say, hi, this is who I am, and I'd love to meet you one day. And so it doesn't have to be like, can we go to coffee, or can I meet you, or can I take you to lunch, or can I take you to dinner? It doesn't have to be any of that. It could just be, hey, my name's Aaron, I'm new in town, and I just wanted to let you know this is what I'm doing. I'm working with Bishop Cousins, right? Working with Bishop Cousins, and I just wanted you to know who I was. And I hope to meet you one day. And that's it. And leave it at that. And you'd be surprised how many people will do all the talking and you don't have to do anything. They're just going to say yes. So, okay, does that answer your question?
So don't always ask for the first meeting, just say hello and you choose yourself.
Totally. You don't put so much pressure on yourself at the very instant. I mean, you can ask for it, but only if it's natural. Don't force it. Don't force it. And I think that's really important. Anybody that's managing a major gift team, to make sure that you're letting them know this is authentic relationship. This is about evangelization and discipleship. We should all be trying to bring people to Jesus and help them on the journey. We want to know them as a person. If they make a gift, great. If they don't make a gift, then that's not up to us. And it takes the weight off of you, because it's not all on you. This is God, but he's asking us to do the work in it. So, Peter, you said someone had a question. Chris Kudemeyer?
Bishop, how do you like to be prepared for a solicitation visit? You're going to ask for a gift. What did you want Cande to do with you before that visit to get you ready?
Oh, that's great.
I know the answer to that.
Well,
I know the answer to that.
go ahead.
No, you, Bishop.
I think with working with Cande, he had a really good way of getting people to get involved in a conversation. So I pretty much trusted his making the first contact there, unless I knew something about them. If I knew anything about them or had been told anything about them, then I would call them up and say, this is what I've heard, and I would really like to get to know more about how you got involved in doing this. And we just have to do with their starting a business or something that happened in the parish there, and they took a leadership thing there, and they never dreamed I would call them, but I found out what they did in the parish. So try to just find some way to begin to hear their story about what they did.
Thank you, Bishop. I also remember you and I praying the Liturgy of the Hours, the Rosary, the Divine Mercy. And I'd always want to know what day it was so I could prep myself on what the mysteries were to make sure I wasn't dumb in front of Bishop. But Bishop always made it very light. And you always prayed for the people that we were visiting. He didn't pray for a gift. He prayed for them and their families. And that was something very special to me, because I knew Bishop wasn't even concerned about closing the gift. He was more concerned about being present with someone. So that would be the other piece to it, Bishop. Go ahead, Bishop.
Yeah, I think it's very important that they continue to see me as a spiritual father. That's primarily who I am. So that's primarily what I wanted, to have a relationship that grows in that way, before we think about other ways they can help the church.
And I think that's a good tip for the development directors, to know that your role is to help Bishop or your CEO to build that relationship to talk about the mission. And our relationship is to do all the nuts and bolts and the preparation to get and the follow through to make his job easier. So we're going to have to wrap up now, but I have one last question and one last comment to all of you. So Maria, just final question for each of you. If you could give one piece of advice for everyone in this room that are fundraisers or responsible for engagement, raising money for their mission, what piece of advice would you give them?
I would say to keep focused on the mission. I think it's really easy to get focused on the money, and that's when trouble can happen. So stay focused on the mission.
I always say trust God. He made you, He's put you where you are now, and He has a mission for you. So trust Him. Trust that wherever He puts you, whatever is before you, He will be at work in that.
What I would say is the one thing that we talked a lot about, but it follows good with the three of us. So I would say this: see people not as problems or things that you have to figure out or solve, but people you're called to love. And I think so many times we're trying to figure people out, or we're trying to fix a problem, but we have to love people. And I think if we do that with these three things, it really makes a difference. And you have to shift that, when you're entering into a conversation. It's not trying to figure them out. I'm called to love in the way Christ calls us to.
Thank you, Father. Just a final remarks to all of you is I would share with you is all of you have a very important position. You have been called into this ministry to help support the mission. So you're not alone. You have the gifts of the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit to guide you, to lead you, but you've got to allow the Trinity to help lead you. I would encourage you, if you haven't already, to just spend some time with the Lord, get on your knees and just ask God, help me, please, and show me the next step. And you don't have to know everything. You just got to point yourself in the right direction and take one step. That's it. And don't beat yourself up. Have some grace and mercy on yourself. It's really important because you have such an important mission. And the other thing with this is if you're not happy, or if you feel like, I don't know if I like this or if I want to do this, that's something you should pray about. I would really encourage everybody to always think about, is this where God wants me to be? And if it's not, that's okay. But find out where God is calling you, because that's where you're going to thrive. That really is where you're going to thrive. And finally, I would say this group in here, we don't do it alone. So make sure before you leave that you've built a friendship with somebody. Get their phone number, somebody you do not know, and call them, talk to them, build a relationship, get to know their ministry so they can get to know yours, and then you can ask them for help. Peter mentioned that we started doing this like with ourselves, and it's lasted for a while, and it's really impactful. So take care of each other. We got to take care of each other. So with that, can we give a round of applause to our wonderful guests?